Buckley, I'm excited to speak to you. How are you?
Mario, I'm excited to speak to you. Thank you for having me. I'm well. Thank you.
Um, I'll tell you the direction I want to take this conversation. I tend to cover personally, at least. My account covers domestic politics in the US a bit more. But personally, I'm into geopolitics more, and I'm always watching what's happening in the US with fascination. Um, and I love your story. How you saw Trump at the beginning, and then how you've been surprised with recent developments, even in his first administration. And what I want you to explain to me and the audience is what's going on in the US. Like I wake up one morning, he's attacking Candace and your brother Tucker Carlson and who else? Alex Jones and all these people that were massive support. They're the people that made Trump Trump. So I'm watching what's happening, and obviously I can relate to it because I'm surprised by this war in Iran, very surprised by this war in Iran. But maybe you can start with what's the sentiment like in the US? And also, what are the people that are still supporting Trump? What is their view of what's happening right now? Because it's a clear pivot from the Trump we knew before he became president. So how do they explain that dichotomy?
It's interesting, starting with the last part of your question, they just lie. They don't actually explain. They just claim that this was, in fact, Trump's intention all along. And they go back and pull up video from him in the 80s saying that Iran can't have nuclear power, nuclear weapons, which is true and consistent. But they ignore the fact that everything Donald Trump has done in the last nearly 2 years of his presidency has been a complete repudiation of his well-articulated principles and agenda, which was overwhelmingly supported not just by the right, but this new coalition that he had been successful in assembling that we had never seen in my lifetime. Anyway, I'm in my 50s. And I think what's most upsetting about it actually is that American voters for a very long time, and especially on the right, are used to being betrayed. They're used to being courted during elections, and then they're used to having their leaders govern completely opposite. So they saw in Trump someone who was stalwart and unmovable and had a very simple to articulate and support and absolutely achievable agenda. So for him to come into office to close the border is about the only thing that he's done that he promised that he would do. And then he has failed to do anything else. And then he has degraded American power and failed to address any of the domestic problems which we have that are overwhelming and have been for a generation. And he was the guy who was seen as the existential leader to come in and restore order, restore American power, restore our focus domestically, and not to be pushed around. And then we've gotten the complete opposite. He has revealed that we are no longer, or if we ever had been, a sovereign power. And worse, he's treated his voters and the American people with extreme disdain and contempt. So I see it all. I don't know a legitimate, long-standing Trump supporter, and by Trump supporter, I mean not just supporter of the man, but much more broadly, supporter of his program, who supports it now. People are stung, people are irritated, they're dispirited, and they feel like they're living in the Twilight Zone because they can't get the truth and they can't. Where did the original Donald Trump go that they voted for and supported for over a decade? I don't want to give you a much longer answer, but I would just say,
yeah.
Sorry, I was talking
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, I want you to say that last comment, and I'll ask a question on what you've said.
Sure. When you say his supporters now, obviously he has, a whole cadre of new supporters around him, people who didn't support him in 15 or 16, who did not support him or the agenda, quite specifically, in the first term, people who said horrible things about him and the agenda, and now they're the ones who have the first and the last word with Donald Trump. It makes no sense. These are the people who were working to eliminate him from public office and to incarcerate him. and to hurt the very Americans who'd supported him for over a decade. And now they're the ones who somehow carry the mantle of making America great again.
One thing that I've been trying to really understand is what happened. Because there's one statement you said, American voters are used to being betrayed. And like, there's something systemic there. Tucker is obviously very vocal about Israeli influence in the US, which is, I watch it happen, unfold. I don't know how much influence they have. It's definitely too much. But it's just heartbreaking to see them hijack the American system to their advantage. Good for them, bad for the US. But there's more to it than that, in my view. When I spoke to people behind the scenes that, they know Trump well, to understand why did he do what he did? The Iran war was such a shock to me. Epstein files, to be honest, I could understand that one more than the Iran war. In the Epstein files, I'm not saying it's okay, because I covered it very extensively and I'll continue to do so. I'm like, look, very powerful people are implicated in this. There's intelligence involved. And unfortunately, there's potentially things that are standing in Trump's way. He'd love to release the files. I don't think he gets implicated in them in any way. But, there's nothing there against him. I just think there's people around him that would face issues because of it, including potentially intelligence agencies. So there was an explanation in my mind. The war in Iran, I'm struggling to make sense of it. So what's your analysis? What led him, in your opinion, to start that war? Was it two voices, one in one ear, the other one in the other ear? People in his administration saying, Mr. President, it's a horrible idea when he goes to the White House. And then when he goes to Mar-a-Lago, he's got the people that backed him, that made him president, the donors, it's whispering in his ear, that's your chance to defeat Iran, to become a great president, incredible legacy. And those are the ones that won and tricked him into this war. Or how do you see it?
I see it as a combination of all those things, as you seem to indicate that you do as well. Definitely the financial pressure, definitely the new advisors who were telling him things. I mean, no one is more isolated than the American president, it seems. He's got a limited amount of time and a limited amount of people he can listen to, and those who've been most aggressive in his ear. But I also understand that there was really no enthusiasm on his part, no enthusiasm from his inner circle to do this, that everybody understood that we were going to end up in the position we're in now or worse. It's kind of hard to ignore in all of this Trump's sense of being a pivotal figure. It's hard also to ignore his delusions of grandeur, his attacks on Christianity and Islam. It's hard to set aside all of those allusions that he's made to being a Christ-like figure. I know that a lot of people have been attacked for asking that question, but this seems like a spiritual war. It seems like there's some sort of power that is being exerted upon him that is not definable necessarily by money or barking in his ear. It's not a complete answer. I don't know the answer, but I do suspect it's greater than simply cash and the loudest voices in his ear, because the downside is so profound and was so clearly understood from not just his own personal political capital, the health of America, the future of American power, our relationship with our allies in the world, the revelation that America is no longer sovereign, maybe it had never been. I mean, there is a whole host of obvious and foreseeable downside here. People around him are not stupid. Trump's not stupid. He didn't want to do it. So what is the force that is so powerful that could make him overcome all the sense of self-preservation? I mean, Trump takes self-preservation quite seriously. I would say too seriously. He's 80 years old. He's accomplished a lot. His own personal well-being and security should not be first and foremost. So,
you're also struggling to understand what it is.
I am. It's so shocking we live in the twilight zone at the moment, it seems to me, as an American who's very proud of our country.
It is sad. Like, as an Australian national, I want democracy to flourish, But then I'm starting to think like democracy is based on a system. Autocracies like China are based on one person making the decisions, and for that to work, the person making the decision should put the well-being of the country above their own legacy or their own interests. And the goal is to have a successor that also fits that same description as a good leader, and that's where it gets tricky. But when it's a system, it works better, and it's proven to be the case over the last few decades. But also systems have flaws. And what I'm worried is there's flaws within the American system that have been exploited by some interest groups, obviously Israel being one of the ones that we're most vocal about. But there's other lobbying groups as well, big oil, the military-industrial complex. But it's hard to figure out how the dynamic works behind the scenes. For someone like Trump, who's had supporters like yourself that have supported him through the years, especially in the early days, in 2015, when no one supported Trump, you were a supporter. And then for people like that to be betrayed or to feel betrayed, I don't know I don't know why. I'm really struggling. But if you had to, if I kind of pressed you again, what would you guess? Even though I know you don't know for sure.
I think it's a combination. Well, I do think he's under physical threat. I think it's hard to imagine that he's not. I think he feels, I do know, have heard from authoritative sources that he spent a lot of time in the first term worried about his physical safety. It's been demonstrated several times since in the campaign, obviously, and then now in the first term. Apparently, there have been 3 or 4 major breaches of his security. So I think that's something that he worries about and thinks about. And then my understanding also is that Netanyahu made it very clear that if we didn't go into the war, that they would go without us, and the repercussions there would have been worse than they've been now. So they felt, I mean, Rubio said this initially before all the liars tried to rewrite history. Obviously, it's been proven now with the documents from the State Department. I mean, again, only dishonest people claim that we didn't go into this war reluctantly at the behest of Israel. That's my opinion. I think it's fact. So what would have led him to do something like that beyond world conflagration or threats to himself or his family? That seems the most plausible to me.
Yeah. Well, it was hard to really find another explanation, because that war in Iran is just so foolish. Again, it's just wrong in so many ways. And look where we are now. We have that guy, I keep forgetting his name, that put the article on The Atlantic, Kagan, who talked about someone that supported the war in Iraq, the kind of the face of neocons, who supported the Iran war, obviously, and the US using military power to maintain its hegemon status. And for someone like that to say, hey, we've got many bad options, but the least bad option is to walk away, it just shows you the impact this has had on US dominance around the world. But it would be just crazy to believe, and maybe I'm naive for not really considering it a bit further, that Israel has so much influence that they can drag the US into a war that becomes existential to America being the world empire. That is wild to imagine. I understand they have a lot of influence through the lobbying groups and the donors. That's understandable, and that's bad enough, hijacking the system to that extent. But to be the sole reason, because my approach is that there's a lot of reasons why Trump decided to go into this war, and he was kind of misled on how easy it will be. But it's just also hard to be misled on something so simple to understand. Everyone said if you attack Iran, they'll close the Strait of Hormuz and attack the Gulf. Everybody said it. So how come the president of the United States, who has access to more classified information theoretically than anyone, how is he surprised that they closed the Strait of Hormuz and attacked the Gulf? So no, maybe was he misled into it, which includes false intel, or as you're saying, or I think you're implying that he might have been forced into it, or maybe a combination of both.
I mean, this is the question that I've spent a lot of time thinking of for the last, 60 days, as so many people have. I don't know what the answer is. I just know it's very clear that the downside was overwhelming and to be avoided at all costs. I mean, on every metric, it seems like we're losing. Even if we pull out now, I mean, I'm an advocate of ending the war as soon as possible, for sure. but we obviously end up in a place where we're a lot weaker. We're exposed to be a lot weaker. We have less friends, less power, less influence, less military men who died, less rationale for our power in the world. I mean, it's devastating, and revealed to be, again, not a sovereign country. No one would choose to make decisions like this, to so completely betray the trust of the American people, betray the power that was vested in him by so many, lightly. One hopes. I'm not an expert on Zionism to any degree at all, but there is certainly a feeling among some that ushering in again, I can't define it quite clearly, but Trump has weird delusions of power that is beyond terrestrial, I would say, because he has made these references about Jesus, about the end of the world. People talk about Revelation and ushering in a new time. Does Trump feel that he is a pivotal world historical character that is supposed to exert that kind of power and usher in something that's quasi-biblical? I don't know, but it's certainly worth exploring.
One thing I've learned is I've always, born a Christian, but I don't practice Christianity, and I've never really understood I've always known there's religious wars and decisions, policy decisions made because of religion, but I never took it seriously. Then I watched Tucker talk about it a lot on his show, and the evangelical support to Zionism and Israel and Jews, and his interview with Mike Huckabee. And I'm like, wow. And I started exploring it further, and the more I dig into it, the more I understand that it actually has a lot of influence over what decisions different countries make. My focus was on Israel. But then that post by Trump on the Pope was just odd. Like, usually there's a reason when he posts something. He's trying to send a message across, trying to troll, and make people laugh, maybe trigger a certain group or distract people from a certain issue. But that one was just odd because it was such a damaging post politically with no gain.
Yes, I agree. Look, I've been a Christian my entire life, but a pretty relaxed Christian, not evangelical in the true sense of the word. I just have a relationship with God. I'm very flawed, but I read the Bible, and I recognize that in no way does Jesus advocate, slaughtering innocents or going to war in any way. And for Trump to meddle with something, look, let me just back up, and Tucker definitely has said this in much more articulate fashion, but it's silly not to observe, even from the most secular country in the world, America, that there is a religious basis. We may not see it in America, but everybody else involved in this clearly does. And they must have understood, planners of this war must have understood the repercussions of taking out Khomeini, religious leader. Israel clearly sees it as a religious war. They talk about it as a religious war. Others in the region do. It would be foolish to disregard the religious component of it. And also, I think it's important to note that there are all sorts of forces acting on every individual. They have always been around, good and bad forces. And that might be an answer to what has motivated Trump here in part.
When you said the planners of this war, again, I know we don't know what we don't know, but who's behind it? Yeah, I don't have a better way of asking it.
I don't have a better way of answering it, except those who've exerted pressure on Trump obviously understood the repercussions of the war. So if Israel obviously has, again, and I'm not attacking Israel at all. Israel has their priorities that are good for Israel. They're not always going to be convergent with American priorities. In this case, they're obviously divergent from American priorities. So Israel feels under attack and surrounded by enemies, and they have aspirations, obviously, to be a greater power than they are. We're facilitating that as funder, as their political guarantor, as their military might, obviously. So I have to assume, and their war planners knew what this was going to lead to, and they obviously desire a disbanded Iran in chaos that poses no threat to them, but also is not. I don't believe they had America's best interest in mind. They had their best interest in mind, but I also feel like an added benefit is undercutting America's power in the region and America as a superpower.
So for Saudis, it just came in Financial Times. Saudi is reportedly exploring a regional non-aggression agreement involving the Middle Eastern states and Iran following the recent conflict. Yeah, it's an example of the Gulf now seeking security guarantees outside of U.S. security, as expected. Just came out now. I have a different take, and I want to get your thoughts on it, Buckley, as well. There's a different lens I look at all this through. I don't know. This is whether this is just me kind of being hopeful, not giving up on Trump's promises of ending wars, not starting wars. And I look at this as a mistake, a terrible mistake, but a mistake. And I remember in January, everyone was talking about the fall of the regime. Now, I'm not a fan of the Iranian government, the Iranian regime whatsoever. And I was very vocal against them in January. I don't like the way they cracked down on protesters, killed thousands of them, and the way they conduct foreign policy. But obviously, the solution is never regime change. So everyone in
because
January
it's not achievable. Sorry to interrupt you.
Exactly.
It's just not,
exactly.
It's been proven to be not achievable. Sorry.
Syria, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. It's some of the most heartbreaking stories. Like Syria now is so sad to see what happened to it. Yemen, etc. So if you look at January, though, everyone was talking about how easy it is to achieve regime change because the regime is about to collapse. There was on betting platforms, it was like 50%, 40, 50, 60% likelihood the regime will collapse from within, just with a bit of support. And then we saw Trump almost order a military strike. Everyone thought he'll strike in January, February, and then he delayed it to conduct a military buildup. So do you think there is a possibility that Trump didn't want the forever war? He was emboldened after Venezuela, and he's walking away right now, despite Iran humiliating him, despite this being a massive loss for the US, a horrible stain on his legacy. He seems, at least for now, that he's not falling into the escalation trap, and he's walking away from a mistake that has cost the US significantly. So is there also a possibility that Trump literally just made a mistake and he was misled by intelligence agencies, US or Israeli intelligence agencies? Is that a possibility as well?
I think that he had unrealistic idea of what the repercussions would be, and I think he was probably shielded from intelligence that would have told him. People in the Pentagon certainly would have been aware. It's clear that Israel knew what was going to happen. Anybody who'd studied the region, I mean, Trump is not a great military mind, despite what he says. I don't know why he would claim that he is, but does one need to be to anticipate that the Strait would be closed, that Iran would be strengthened, that regime change wouldn't work? I mean, to answer your question, yes, I think he's in a bubble. He's a lot of smart advisors. I do absolutely throw my brother into that category who Trump listened to. He stopped listening to and was prevented from listening to a lot of sound minds, and he clearly was surrounded by people with ulterior motives. I mean, the idea that Mark Levin has any sway over Donald Trump, it's insane. So yes, he was allowed to be surrounded by people with ulterior motives, and you control the information flow to the president of the United States. You could absolutely influence his thinking about it. And it's in keeping with Trump's character, which is eternally optimistic, great faith in himself and his abilities, and his ability to will success simply by speaking it.
You talked about your brother when he met Trump beforehand. I remember I was crediting Trump because he was speaking for people from both sides before the war. So I was really hopeful back then. But I was really surprised when Trump made these posts, the crazy about wiping out a civilization, etc. On one side, I was relieved because I saw that to be an off-ramp. So I'm like, all right, for him to make threats that I was confident, maybe naively, confident he won't deliver on, Clearly, he wants to end the war. And on the other side, I should also, and Tucker has been very vocal about this, is that you shouldn't speak like this as a leader. We can't criticize Smotrich and Ben-Gvir for advocating for genocide, and yet the president of the world's biggest democracy and fighter for liberty, freedom, and international rights to be saying something similar, which is, wiping out a civilization. So there's that argument as well. But then Tucker really got worried, and I'm not sure if you shared those concerns about Trump having the nuclear codes. Was Tucker really that worried? Were you worried, and why? Because that's something I wasn't at that place yet. I wasn't that worried yet, but maybe I should have been.
I didn't want to take it seriously, but again, you make a threat that you can't follow through on, that you're unwilling to follow through on, is the essence of handicapping your own power, is it not? I mean, I was always taught, I was not a military man, but I've read a lot about the military or people in general. Don't posture if you're not willing to follow through. That is, there's no greater way to lay bare your weaknesses or the limits of your power than to make a threat that you're unwilling to follow through on. So that just seems like a basic principle to me. That's why it worried me. It seemed that he was, and also he seemed a little unhinged and inconsistent, saying things. I mean, you pointed it out. We can't, on the one hand, condemn genocide and on the other threaten to kill 90 million people, men, women, and children, most of whom are not in accord with, the fanatics in Iran, who are just good people trying to live their normal lives. So, yes, I was quite alarmed by that for those reasons.
Man,
and the fact that he had been so consistent in the past. I mean, he's been very consistent that he is particularly afraid of nuclear power and doesn't want nuclear arms in the world. So
what do you think? What do you think he meant with the one big glow over Iran? Do you think he was hinting at nuclear weapons or massive military strikes?
I mean, to eradicate a civilization, is there some way to do that without using nuclear power? I mean, I'm not privy to all of the secret weapons that we have that Trump alludes to on occasion. I'm willing to believe
unless you don't take it literally. So it's like when you say that, I want to destroy you, when you're angry at someone, they destroy you on the phone, but you're not going to really destroy them, but you might seek revenge somehow. So it's like, again, I'm always the naive optimist, just to kind of disclaimer about me. But just going, the statement he made in one big low, you think he might have been warning of a potential? Because I think if that's what he meant, for me, that's a massive red line. I think like the nuclear thing, we don't mess around with something that could wipe out civilization under no circumstances whatsoever. So that's for me a red line. Yeah. So if he meant one big low, that's a pretty big shock for me. And I'm hoping he doesn't. But I'm hoping I'm not being naive again.
I mean, I share your naivete because it's hard to imagine such evil, honestly. Even though I've been confronted with evil in my life many times, I've seen it up close and personal. It does exist. But I'm eternally optimistic about people's good nature. And I was optimistic about Trump's good nature because he really seemed to care about all Americans, but also civilians and world peace. And he talks about solving. I still haven't really solved the I've stopped 8 wars claim that he continually makes. I'm not a math genius, but I'm not really sure what those words were.
I'm good at marketing. I can explain. I'm a marketing guy, so I can explain to you exactly what I mean.
Can you really? Would you quickly? I think for the elucidation of many.
Overpromise. That's how marketing works. And then pretend you over-delivered.
Yes. Well, see, I'm a writer by training, and by my career, I've been a writer for 35 years. And words matter, and words are precise. And when you have 128 words to convey, every single one matters. And if you're using the term "big glow," then that obviously, to me, that's clear and precise and intentional. So yes, I was frightened by that and dispirited by it. It's hard to believe where we are.
Oh, yes. Like, no, that war, the Iran war really shook me because like our world functions with certain red lines we have in our minds that allows us to wake up in the morning and go about our day. And one of them is like, no one's going to wipe out civilization with a nuclear weapon. Another one's like, we're not going to have a world war. Certain things that we believe in.
Yes.
And when something like this war in Iran, it shook me, because I thought that's a line that would not be crossed. You just don't mess around with a country with that size, with that many ballistic missile programs. And because for me, if you're fine with getting into war with Iran, that would shake up the entire Gulf, and it did. And the Gulf has like that umbrella of security, the image of a security and stability and predictability, that one would feel was impregnable. And when you shake that up, then you start believing like, wow, everything is possible. And the last time I was shook up like this was the invasion of Ukraine. That one shook me up pretty hard as well. And they start to realize that the world we live in is a lot more fragile than one would like to believe. Than I would like to believe when I wake up every morning to do what I do.
Amen. I mean, for foundational stability, the things that we believe in without even thinking about it. Yes, I felt the same. And of course, the gratuitous war in Ukraine that I think we're responsible for, clearly. It's, yeah.
Should have asked Wesley Clark on that. You mentioned something earlier about the assassination attempts on Trump. And I think another thing I've talked a lot about is people forget when Trump was shot in the ear, or technically shot in the head. So like that's wild that just people have moved on. And Trump mentions a lot of things all the time. He always mentions the 2020 election, for example. That really bothers him. And he mentions that a lot more than the fact that he was shot and almost killed, which is a bit bizarre. Like that is such a wild event that should be investigated to this day and should still become one of the key things everyone's discussing to this day. And people have moved on from this faster than anything else that I've seen in the last few years. And it's just weird.
Plus, completely out of character for Trump, who does like to be the victim and point out how he's been persecuted.
That's a perfect example, and it's a legitimate one.
Yes, and it's why. What are the reasons you wouldn't evince any curiosity about your own near-death experience at the hands of when you're in? When
you know who it is. If you know who it is.
If you know who it is.
Some sort of agreement.
Yes. Yeah, which also answers the question, does he take the physical threat seriously? I imagine he does. Yeah, that's a baffling one.
He was asked recently, wasn't he asked recently, would you wear a bulletproof vest? And he was like, no, I prefer to be comfortable, or something along those lines. Because I think maybe he knows that if they decide to take him out, there's not much he could do. So I know
he does still have the golden pager in his office as a gift for Netanyahu. I'm sure you're aware. About the creepiest state gift I've ever seen.
Hold on, sorry. Sorry for my ignorance. I read it somewhere. Hold on. Netanyahu, there was a golden pager given to Trump? No.
Netanyahu presented to Donald Trump in the Oval Office a framed golden pager that says on it, press both sides to activate, because that was the message they sent out, as you're well aware, to Hezbollah. That was the mode, I guess, the crypto mode that you're supposed to activate, and it activated them as explosives. So he gave that to Trump, and on the plaque it says, "Your greatest friend, your greatest ally, Israel," which is just creepy.
Pager. Trump. I'm Googling it now to see it. Is there pictures of it online? I'm guessing there would be.
Yes. I actually posted it on my Twitter account about 6 months ago.
This is the actual, so that's a replica, I assume, correct?
I mean, that would be the assumption you'd want to make, but it's a pretty clear, yes, that's the one.
It doesn't look like a replica.
No, it doesn't. It should say, "Don't ask any questions," underneath.
You know how many people that event has maimed? How many, even civilians, people have lost their arms, their face disfigured, etc.
Children and markets. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know they still maintain to this day, and I mean Israel and its allies in America, they still maintain with quite a bit of ferocity that it was the most precise targeted military operation in history. To which I say, if it's precise, Why are you killing civilians and blowing arms off children? No, it's monstrous to do that.
Yeah.
It's no less monstrous than, mining a public football field.
That reminds me of, so for me, these things are like the ugliness of war in every single country. When people talk about, so I have a loved one that's been impacted badly because of this war, the war in Iran and what's happening in the region. And they keep talking critically of the US and US hegemony being bad. And they're a pacifist. They have nothing to do with politics. It's like a really good person. And I tell them, look, I'm very critical of US foreign policy. I'm critical of wars. I hate wars. Similar position as you, Buckley, and your brother. But I always make the argument. I'm like, if you go through history, every time there's a world power, these things happen. There's always wars, and they always, act with impunity. And we are going through the longest period of peacetime we've ever seen. So my worry now is maybe a multipolar world would create checks and balances where the US would not act with such impunity. What bothers me more, and you might disagree with this, by the way, my initial statement about, maybe in history, there were world powers that were more peaceful. But I just feel like if China was the world power right now, they might be very different to the China we see right now, which are non-interventionist. Maybe not. I don't know. But I tell them, I'm like, look, to be honest, I still would like a democracy to be the world power. I'm a believer of a democratic system, and that's the world I want to live in. And I can't sit there and be criticizing a democracy as an Australian. If I'm living, I would never want to live in China under the system they're creating, even though they're living in prosperity now. So that's where I stand. But what hurts me the most and what really bothers me the most is, and what you've been explaining in ways that are better than I could ever explain, is the way the American system has been hijacked. Like, I feel like democracy had flaws in the way it was built, and they've taken advantage of it. And like that kind of leads to my next question is, and I know I'm pressing you a lot on this and you don't have an answer, so I'm kind of going in circles. But like, when we talk about, is there really people behind the scenes that do make a lot of the decisions, and those, the unelected officials, the swamp, the deep state? Would you say Trump's presidency has kind of proven this to be more powerful than we've ever imagined? Is that a fair statement?
I think it's an absolutely fair statement. And also, just to go back to what you'd initially said in the beginning of our conversation about Epstein, and why you understand that Trump couldn't have revealed the Epstein files, is because it's not really a story. It's a story of creepy people. Sure, it's a story of some pedophilia or underage women, but it's really a revelation of a supernatural power, or an international power, that is totally unaccountable and mostly unseen. And that is the revelation from the Epstein files, that there are really no borders, that there is a powerful force that controls pretty much all of the major governments in the world, it seems. Yes, Trump has revealed to be far less in control than I think most Americans thought. The American president, he had ultimate power. He's revealed that he doesn't have ultimate power, and that he is a slave either to this enormous leviathan, this government that we have here, that's the largest in the world, that's the largest that has ever been, and that it doesn't answer to one man, and it doesn't answer to elected officials in any way. And I think the only way out, I think a lot of Americans have seen that, much to their dismay and horror, and it's caused them to not want to participate. Well, it's revealed that we don't have a representative government, as you said, and I share your same views about world history and inevitable conflict, and also the desire to have democracy come out on top and be prevalent and powerful. But we don't have that at the moment, and it's causing a lot of turmoil here in America, and with upcoming elections, not just the midterms, but the elections in 28, and what people are looking for in their candidates and what they're demanding. Much longer answer, I think, than you wanted. Sorry.
No, I love it. Do you think Americans are realizing this, or are they really just kind of, because they're too busy with daily life and they've just been indoctrinated by media, that they don't understand what you're explaining? They don't understand what the promises that Trump has broken. They don't understand that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon and the JCPOA was a solution to that. They don't understand that the Epstein files, probably most people, that one is probably the one that people understand the most. But they moved on from it and they've forgotten about it, which is even crazier, the attention span that we have. So do you think Americans are more aware of it than ever now than before, or not? Not really.
Significantly more aware of it. And also because they're confronted with the obvious economic problems that we're facing in America now, which are heightened. And they had faith that not just the 74 or 80 million people that voted for Donald Trump, but I think the mandate that he had in December of 24 after having been elected was one that was shared widely. I mean, opinion polling says it was, close the border, focus on our debt, focus on our crumbling infrastructure, focus on the economic realities of America, lower gas prices, lower food prices, maybe stop poisoning people. I mean, that's one of the reasons, we hadn't touched on it yet, but that's one of the reasons why I'm so offended and why so many people are offended is that his mandate was real, it was overwhelming, it was super strong, and beyond that, it was achievable. If we do actually have two parties, no one was more demoralized, bankrupt, broken. They had spent, $2 billion in 3 months for Kamala Harris's campaign. They were directionless. They didn't know where to go. The Democrats, I mean. The Republicans had all three houses. They had Trump. They had this overwhelming mandate to carry forward this program that had been talked about for an entire decade. And then we end up with, yes, a closed border, no mass deportations, no address of any of the economic problems we have here, no righting of the corruption of the judicial system that had been made apparent over the past decade. And now we're in a war that further demoralizes American power, kills Americans, destabilizes our friendships across the world, makes energy even harder to access and more expensive. I think a lot of Americans, not just Trump supporters, are saying, holy smokes, what just happened? I mean, it costs, $12 for a pound of bacon, a gallon of milk, gallon of gas. I'm in a tiny little town in Maine right now, been here for 40 years, spend as much time as I can here, but it's a town that is suffering because it had a lot of manufacturing in an earlier part of American history, and now it's got fentanyl abuse, alcoholism, very few jobs, but it always had available and inexpensive gas. I've never seen gas here more than $2.88. I drove in the other day and it was at $4.50 in a tiny little rural town in Maine. That is unsustainable, and obviously its effects are everywhere. I went to one of the local restaurants the other day and it's barely holding on, and I was here last summer and it was packed. I mean, that's happened. It's a small microcosm here, but
why are people not on the streets en masse?
I think that's probably coming. I've never seen a more volatile situation. I'm 55, so I'm not that young, and I've been paying attention and worked in Washington for 30 years, but I get out and about, I travel a ton, I mean by car, and I talk to people, talk to real Americans in my daily life all the time, and I don't know anybody. I mean, you don't even have to make a statement, you just allude to it at the gas pump. Oh, we're happy about our war in Iran, are you? And people are disgusted. They are fed up and dispirited to a much greater degree than they ever were, even during the Biden administration, which was an absurdity and like a daily offense. Because Donald, as I said in the beginning, Americans are used to being betrayed by their elected officials. They have been betrayed for so long. And Donald Trump embodied a return to normalcy, a return to American strength, a return to American heritage, a return to celebration of American hard work and families. And the fact that he has failed at his responsibilities and then taken it so much further by degrading our country on the world stage and degrading our daily lives is unforgivable in my book and in many, not just mine.
Do you think Trump is aware of this in his bubble?
He doesn't seem to be. I mean, I know it's been a couple months now, and I think it was right before the election. There were a number of news stories where he went talking about him going to the Hill and talking to the Republican caucus. And he actually said, I don't understand. Like, why are people are upset? Why are they upset? You know, I've issued all of these executive orders and they're great. It's like, okay, well, you've issued executive orders, but you have not used your political power to hold the Republicans who got elected on your coattails by the same people who put you in office, the same people who invested all this faith, all this hard work, and they've done nothing to further the agenda of Make America Great Again. It's all been completely hijacked. And yes, I think people also notice Trump's disdain for them, the contempt that he's had about concerns for their daily lives, toiling to support their families. I mean, he made fun the other day of grocery prices. I mean, that's, you know, George Bush got kicked out of office because he was not aware that there were electronic scanning machines and didn't know the price of a gallon of milk. Well, it's much worse when Donald Trump is actually making fun of people for not being able to afford their daily staples, I would say.
You've been covering this for very long, obviously way longer than I, and been involved in it. Has the political system changed much over the last few decades? You know, we're talking about whoever's making those decisions having influence over those who are elected by the American people. Are we just seeing the same thing we've seen for many decades? It's just becoming clearer, or is it becoming more entrenched? Because you did hint the government is bigger than it's ever been.
I think it's gotten, you know, I did actually believe the argument before the Supreme Court. I can't remember 2 decades ago when it was, you know, money is speech, was basically what that Supreme Court case concluded, that the enormous amount of soft money that goes into not individual candidates, but, you know, C3s, C4s that surround a candidate, so you can give an unlimited amount of money to support a candidate. It's what's happening now in Kentucky, one of the most important races in our country. Thomas Massey, representative in Kentucky, is being absolutely deluged with foreign money, and that's allowed to happen because they're allowed to, you know, Miriam Adelson is allowed to give $10-20 million to some unaccountable big money group that floods the state with ads and influences a local election. That's absurd and that's obscene, and yet it happens all of the time now. Yes, it's grown to a proportion that is hard to manage, and that swamps the speech and the vote and the power of an individual American. And it's just, yes, it's gotten exponentially worse over the past 2 decades, I would say.
What are Thomas Massey's odds when I open up the betting platforms? Have you looked at it? What is it? What are the polls?
I did. I saw yesterday. I thought he was 3 or 4 points ahead of his challenger, who was kind of a buffoon. Yeah, he was. And then yesterday I saw a news story, but it was also a completely corrupt news story from Breitbart. I have not seen like Polymarket or any.
I'm gonna check.
I haven't seen latest polls, but I know that he's very popular in his district. He's very popular in his state, and it's
It would be wild if he doesn't win. It would be wild. I don't know how people like Lindsey Graham and Randy Fine. I don't know how those people get elected. It's like people just don't have the time because they're just worried about paying the bills. They don't have the time to really peel the onion and understand who they're voting for.
And the media coverage for that specific demographic. I know the boomers in America have been attacked relentlessly, but they do actually get they're not on X, they're not on independent media. They do largely get their news from Fox News. Fox News is incredibly dishonest about that race. I've seen stories they've done about Massey, and yet they neglect to mention that he's facing $20-25 million of foreign money. I think that should be the headline in any race. Like, why do we allow a foreign power or individuals who are loyal to a different country to come in and affect a race that is in rural Kentucky? I mean, that's not representative democracy. That's not fair. That's not right. And that should be the #1 headline, as far as I'm concerned. And I think most reasonable people would agree. Sorry,
I was so
I'm really
worried
bad about the Thomas Massey thing.
No, I'm checking now on the polls to see what he's at. I'm opening Polymarket. Fingers crossed that he's ahead.
He's such an impressive man, by the way. He is the way forward. If a new party emerges or a new path emerges, and I think organically it's happening, people are demanding that they don't have that there's no foreign money involved, that there's no foreign influence. Oh, sorry, I want to hear.
So primary winner, according to Polymarket, 64%. Oh wow, Ed just spiked 64% at Thomas Massey. Ed, that's the guy, yeah, the buffoon.
Yes, Ed Galleran.
Yeah,
yep.
Ed Galleran. He's at 40%. He was at yesterday, so after whatever you saw yesterday, he was at 33%, and I just spiked to 40%. What happened there? Let me see when that was. Last week. So he spiked. Oh wow, okay. On May, I don't know what happened on May 13th. So yesterday, as you said, what happened yesterday?
I don't know. I was in studio with my brother most of the day.
No, but he went back, and then he went back down. Yeah, he spiked. Oh wow, they got equal. So literally yesterday, for maybe the article had a lot of impact. It equaled at 50-50. So it was Massey was at 68-33, and then suddenly there's a massive spike down for Massey, up for Ed, goes at 50-50, 53-46 to be exact, or 51-49. And then Massey picks up again. Now it's 65-33. So
I will say
we're back at the normal level. We're back at the normal level, 65-33.
Sanity has been restored. I will tell you one thing.
If Messi loses.
It'll be very upsetting if that happens. I have total faith he's going to win, and he should. And he is. He's not only a very smart and very accomplished family man. He's he's created a ton of jobs, created a ton of interesting products. He's a hard worker, and in the face of the worst kind of attacks from the President of the United States, he's in the same boat as MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, could not have been a more stalwart warrior on behalf of the movement, and to be attacked by Trump the way she has just disgusts me. And same with Thomas Massey. Thomas Massey is he's going to win, and it's going to give a lot of hope to a lot of people around the country, I would say.
Well, Buckley, I pleasure to meet you. Really enjoyed our conversation. I appreciate you giving me the time, and I'm going to see you soon, and I would love to do this again.
I look forward to it. I look forward to showing you our great little town in Maine. I wish you well in your travels, and I wish you well in your current situation. I'm sorry that you're enduring what you are, but thank you for having me, Mario. I really appreciate it. And I would be remiss if I didn't say you have the nicest people working for you.
Oh, really. They're great. Yeah, they're really cool. They're great.
They are really cool. You so much. You have a great day, sir. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Well, that's Buckley Carlson. As cool and genuine as his brother is. He's got the same tonality as Tucker. Just a great family, the Carlsons. Obviously, I only know Buckley and Tucker, but they share a lot of the same values. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I know it's moving away from geopolitics and focusing on American domestic politics, but there's no better person than Buckley to really explain it and explain those within MAGA that are really upset at what's happening in Trump's second term. So let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll be going live again in 3 minutes. Thank you, guys.